The artifact I brought in isn't a dug artifact, but it is one of my favorite ones for many reasons. I think it represents a lot of the unknown stories, or stories that kind of were eclipsed by the bigger stories of the war, such as the larger battles, the more colorful figures that the war produced. But this one is a favorite to me because, for one, it does represent those things, but also it's from where I live currently, or from where near I live. This gentleman that's seated in this picture is Lieutenant Colonel Thomas G Woodward, who was actually a Yankee by birth. Actually had gone to West Point, was kicked out due to not quite following the rules, too many demerits, as they say. Also went to Yale and Harvard and was kicked out of those as well. He then moved to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, where he became a local writer and also practiced law in Hopkinsville. And at the outbreak of the war, he decided to raise a company of cavalry. And his cavalry commands had come and gone, much to his indifference. His bad habits followed him throughout his military career, so he was continuously building and having commands taken away from him due to the inability to follow higher commands, rules, not filing paperwork, etc. But in the summer of 1862, after the fall of Fort Donelson, he would become acquainted with a gentleman by the name of Adam Rankin Johnson, who would be later known as Stovepipe Johnson. And they would join their cavalry command and set their target on a town in North Tennessee, just northwest of Nashville, called Clarksville. Now, what was happening in Clarksville in the summer of 1862 was that area was the post-fall of Fort Donelson, had fallen that previous winter, and Grant had put one regiment of troops to guard the Cumberland River area, one at Fort Donelson, and the other half of that regiment, the 71st Ohio, in Clarksville. So half the regiment was in Dover, Tennessee at Fort Donelson, the other half was in Clarksville. The problem in Clarksville was that the water was running low in the river. The river was becoming low because of the summer heat, and there was no rain. So what was happening was that was a main supply line for the Union Army of sending supplies down through Nashville. And because of the low water, the riverboats couldn't get to Nashville, so they were dumping excessive supplies in Clarksville. Adam Rankin Johnson and Colonel Woodward, who were building new commands, needed equipment. And so what they did is they decided to attack Clarksville with the hopes of not only capturing that equipment, but also getting new recruits and weapons, etc. So, on August 18th, 1862, Adam Rankin Johnson and Colonel Woodward, who you see here, rushed into Clarksville and captured it without firing one shot. They basically surrounded the town and approached the town to meet the colonel of the 71st Ohio, Rodney Mason. After talking with both Mason and his captains that were in charge of the town, Adam Rankin Johnson and Colonel Woodward accepted the surrender of Clarksville from Rodney Mason. It was then decided that they would put the commanders and the company commanders on a boat and send them to Paducah, and basically paroled them and sent them on a boat out of town. But before doing so, Rodney Mason was speaking with Colonel Woodward. And he was so enthralled by this figure, this man that he met, that he asked him if he would go downtown with him and he would pay for him to have his picture made. So Rodney Mason, the colonel of the 71st Ohio, walked Colonel Woodward downtown Clarksville and paid for this picture that you see right here. There are actually two poses done of him, one standing and one sitting. But this one does have the back mark of Clarksville, as you can see there, photographed in Clarksville. And the front pose is of him seated. Now what's interesting is many, many years after the war, in a Confederate Veterans magazine, this particular instance of the war was brought up. And there was an actual eyewitness to the account that wrote into the Confederate Veteran magazine, and I thought I would read it now. After being paroled by the Confederates, Colonel Mason asked Colonel Woodward if he would do him a favor with his photograph. Colonel Woodward did not weigh more than 110 pounds, had long curling hair flowing over his shoulders. His very small legs were stuck in high cavalry boots reaching above his knees, and on which was an enormous pair of Mexican spurs. He had a cavalry saber that was much too long for him, and an army pistol attached to his belt, which contrasted with his size looked like a small cannon. His gray pantaloons were stuffed in his boot, while a dark gray hunting shirt with a narrow-brimmed corduroy slouch hat completed his apparel. All this, with an extremely dust-begrimed face, made a picture ridiculously amusing. It was asked why Colonel Mason would have this done, why he would pay to have this Confederate colonel's picture taken. In his reply, upon being asked why he desired the photo, Colonel Mason replied that he wished to show his friends in the North what a little insignificant cuss he had been forced to surrender to. What's interesting about this incident was, although it was small in the big picture, this particular incident would be written about in newspapers within 48 to 72 hours in newspapers across the country, from Boston to California. As a result of what happened, Rodney Mason was cashiered out of the Army, never to serve again throughout the entire war. And it was only after the war, shortly thereafter, that he was given a pardon, was honored as giving his military service. But as far as the Civil War goes, he was cashiered out of service as embarrassment for what had happened here. He ended up having to leave Ohio as a result of the shame that was borne upon his name as a result of this one incident. But Colonel Woodward himself would go on to fight. He would attempt to capture Dover in the Second Battle of Dover and fail. He would raise multiple commands and serve under the command of Nathan Bedford Forrest, such at the Battle of Parker's Crossroads. But unfortunately, his drinking would catch up with him again, and after losing his last command, got a band of guys together with the attempt to recapture Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and in a drunken state rode downtown Hopkinsville where men were waiting on him, and they shot him in downtown Hopkinsville dead. He is buried there today in Riverside Cemetery in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. So kind of a sad end to a colorful character, but again, kind of one of those unique stories that don't get much press in the history books, but I think really give light as to what the Civil War was all about to a lot of people, how it affected them.